Are all X-Men villains created equal? Kicking off our list is a villain who's more laughable than intimidating. Unus The Untouchable. This guy can create a force field around himself, making him, well, untouchable. Sounds cool on paper, but in practice, it's pretty lame. He first appeared way back in X-Men number 8, making him one of the X-Men's oldest foes. Unus has had some truly ridiculous moments, like when he teamed up with the Blob to fight the Hulk. Spoiler alert, it didn't go well for him. He even lost his powers for a while during the M-Day event when Scarlet Witch uttered those infamous words, "No more mutants." He eventually regained a version of his powers, but it ultimately proved fatal. His uncontrolled force field grew so powerful that he suffocated. Talk about a tragic and forgettable ending. Unus's power is inherently defensive, which makes him a pretty boring villain. He's not exactly known for his strategic mind or cunning plans. He's just a big, untouchable brute who gets defeated time and time again. Plus, his costume is pretty basic-y. He's basically just a big guy in a purple unitard. Next up is Mesmero, the master of mind control with a truly forgettable design. This guy looks like he wandered off the set of a low-budget sci-fi movie with his purple suit and weird headpiece. He's been around since the early days of the X-Men, but he's never really made a lasting impact. Mesmero's powers are pretty standard for an X-Men villain. He can control minds, but he's mostly used as a lackey for other more powerful villains like Magneto and Apocalypse. He even tried to go straight as a stage hypnotist, but even that didn't work out for him. Poor Mesmero, he just can't catch a break. Mesmero is a one-trick pony. His mind control powers are potentially interesting, but he lacks the personality or the motivation to make him a truly compelling villain. He's often overshadowed by the characters he's controlling, and his visual design is just plain bland. Coming in at number 8 is Donald Pierce, the cyborg mutant hater who's more annoying than threatening. This guy is basically a discount Bolivar Trask with a robotic arm and a serious grudge against mutants. He's been a member of the Hellfire Club, an exclusive society of wealthy and influential individuals with the sole intention of eliminating its mutant members. He even led his own team of cyborg mutant hunters called the Reavers. Despite his hatred for mutants, Pierce has never really posed a significant threat to the X-Men. He's been defeated countless times, and his plans are often convoluted and nonsensical. He even got his arm chopped off by Wolverine in the movie Logan. Ouch. Pierce is a generic villain with a tired motivation. His hatred for mutants is predictable and lacks any real depth. He's basically just a walking cliche of a bigoted human who fears and despises those who are different. These creepy crawlies are the stuff of nightmares, but not in a good way. The Brood are a race of insectoid aliens who reproduce by implanting their eggs in other beings. Yuck, they've been a thorn in the X-Men's side for years, but they're not exactly the most memorable villains. The Brood's biggest claim to fame is their appearance in the classic Brood Saga storyline, but even then they were overshadowed by the X-Men's struggle to overcome their parasitic influence. Plus, they just look kind of silly with their bug eyes and pointy teeth. The Brood are essentially just space bugs with a gross way of reproducing. They lack any real personality or motivation beyond their primal instincts. They're more of a force of nature than a group of compelling villains. This guy's the definition of a forgettable villain. Graydon Creed is the son of Sabretooth and Mystique, and he hates mutants with a passion. He founded the anti-mutant group Friends of Humanity and even ran for president on an anti-mutant platform. Creed's hatred for mutants stems from his own complicated family history. He was abandoned by his mutant parents and grew up resenting them for it, but his plans are often poorly thought out, and he's easily defeated by the X-Men. He even gets killed by his own mother in one storyline. Creed is a whiny, hypocritical villain who's more pathetic than threatening. His hatred for mutants is rooted in his own personal issues, and he lacks the charisma or the intelligence to make him a truly compelling antagonist. This villain's name is pretty ironic, considering how uninspired he is. Mastermind is a mutant with the power to create illusions, but he's mostly known for manipulating Jean Grey into becoming the Dark Phoenix. Mastermind has been a member of several villainous groups, including the Brotherhood of Mutants and the Hellfire Club, but he's never really been a major player in the X-Men's world. He's more of a side character who pops up occasionally to cause some trouble. Mastermind's power is potentially interesting, but he's often relegated to the role of a manipulator or a supporting villain. He lacks the presence or the originality to stand out in the crowded field of X-Men villains. This guy is just plain creepy. Cameron Hodge was once a friend of Warren Worthington III, Angel, but he later became a cyborg mutant hater with a serious god complex. He even made a deal with a demon named Nashtar to become immortal. Hodge has done some truly horrific things, like killing Warlock and torturing the New Mutants. But he's not exactly the most memorable villain. He's more of a disturbing footnote in X-Men history. Hodge is a disturbing villain, but his motivations are often muddled, and his actions are more grotesque than compelling. He's a character who's defined by his hatred and his obsession with destroying mutants, which makes him a rather one-dimensional antagonist. This guy is basically a walking mood ring. Empath is a mutant who can sense and manipulate emotions, but he's mostly used as a pawn by other villains. He's been a member of the Hellions, a group of young mutants trained by Emma Frost to be villains, and even worked for the White Queen herself. Empath's powers are potentially interesting, but he's never really been developed into a compelling character. He's more of a plot device than a fully realized villain. Plus, his costume is just awful. Empath is a weak and underdeveloped villain with a forgettable power set. He lacks the agency or the personality to make him a truly memorable antagonist. He's often portrayed as a whiny and manipulative character who's easily controlled by others. No, not the devil from the TV show. This Lucifer is an alien conqueror who once tried to take over Earth. He's also a bitter enemy of Charles Xavier, but he's not exactly a household name. Lucifer's powers are pretty generic. He's super strong and can fly, but he's never really posed a serious threat to the X-Men. He's more of a footnote in their long and complicated history. Lucifer is a bland and uninspired villain with a generic power set and a forgettable design. He's basically just another alien conqueror who wants to rule the world, and he lacks the personality or the backstory to make him stand out from the crowd. This Soviet super soldier is the epitome of a forgettable X-Men villain. Omega Red has carbonadium tentacles that drain life energy, but he's mostly known for being defeated by Wolverine over and over again. Omega Red has been a member of various villainous groups, including the Soviet Super Soldiers and the Weapon X program, but he's never really been a major threat to the X-Men. He's more of a recurring punching bag for Wolverine. Omega Red is a one-dimensional villain with a limited power set and a ridiculous design. He's basically just a Russian stereotype with tentacles, and he lacks the depth or the complexity to make him a truly memorable antagonist. So while these villains might not be universe-shattering threats, the Marvel Universe does have its share of cosmic heavy hitters.
Hot off the press at number 10, we have a clone of Nathaniel Essex, one of the X-Men's most enduring and sinister foes. So sinister, he had no choice but to become Mr. Sinister. Originally a brilliant Victorian-era scientist obsessed with evolution and genetic perfection, Essex's descent into villainy began after his wife, Rebecca, passed on, cursing him as Sinister upon discovering all of his unethical experiments. Transformed and empowered by the ancient mutant apocalypse, Essex adopted the name Mr. Sinister and dedicated his life to manipulating mutant kind, most infamously through cloning, genetic experimentation, and psychological manipulation. Among his darkest acts is orchestrating the ending of the Morlocks, a peaceful underground mutant community, one of the X-Men's worst tragedies. Sinister's cruelty extended to manipulating Cyclops' life, kidnapping his son, Nathan Summers, later Cable, and erasing the existence of Madelyne Pryor, a clone that he created, leading to the catastrophic Inferno event. In the modern Krakoan era, Sinister reached new lows by corrupting the mutant resurrection process, secretly implanting his own control over resurrected mutants, and attempting to seize control of mutant society, demonstrating his relentless ambition and utter disregard for life. Up next, at number 9, we have Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth. Sabretooth is one of Marvel's most notorious villains, infamous for his brutality and deep-seated rivalry with Wolverine. Born in the late 19th century, Creed's early life was marked by harm and violence and just like really horrible parenting. Sabretooth's origin is further complicated by memory tampering from shadowy organizations like Weapon X, making much of his past just unreliable. His darkest moments are numerous and chilling. He ended Silver Fox, which was Wolverine's lover, and then manipulated an angry Wolverine and grieving Wolverine into ending like an entire town of people. As a merc, Creed became known as the Slasher, ending indiscriminately for pleasure and sport. His cruelty extended to those close to him, and every year he would surprise Wolverine, no matter where he was in the world, for his birthday and just do something evil and diabolical. Silver Fox being the first of the many. Sabretooth's legacy is defined by his relentless savagery, psychological torment of Wolverine, and a history of betrayal and personal tragedy that cements his place among the X-Men's evilest villains. At spot number 8 is the diva that audiences were introduced to to last year in Deadpool and Wolverine, Cassandra Nova. She made her big screen debut almost a year ago, but she has been causing problems since her 2001 debut in the comics. Cassandra Nova is one of the X-Men's most chilling villains, born as the Mummadry, a parasitic psychic entity, at the very moment that Charles Xavier was conceived. She is, in essence, Xavier's dark twin, created from the same genetic material but embodying pretty much everything that he opposes. Even before birth, Cassandra's evil presence was so overwhelming that it triggered Charles's powers to try and eliminate the threat. Surviving this, she spent years reconstructing her body and plotting revenge. Later in life, Cassandra ended up orchestrating the use of Sentinels to end over 16 million mutants, an act of pure, calculated evil that proved that she is one of the most ruthless adversaries the X-Men have ever faced. Her combination of immense psychic power, deep-seated hatred, and utter lack of empathy makes Cassandra Nova a terrifying force. I think it's safe to say that in her case, evil can be born. At number 7 today, we have Madelyne Pryor, one of Marvel's most tragic and complex villains. Created by the villain Mr. Sinister as a clone of Jean Grey, Madelyne was engineered using Jean's genetic material and implanted with false memories, her entire existence designed to manipulate Cyclops, Scott Summers, into falling in love with her and fathering a child, Nathan Summers, later known as Cable, whose genetic potential Sinister coveted. Initially unaware of her origins, Madelyne lived a pretty normal life, marrying Scott and starting their family. However, her world fell apart when Jean Grey returned, leading Scott to abandon Madelyne and Nathan, which began her descent into darkness. The revelation of her true nature as a clone and a pawn shattered Madelyne. Demonic forces exploited her pain and resentment and awakened latent psychic powers and transformed her into the Goblin Queen. In her darkest moment, Madelyne struck a deal with demons to open a portal to Limbo, unleashing a demonic invasion on New York City. She attempted to sacrifice her own family, along with others, to cement her power to keep the portal open, but was ultimately stopped by the X-Men. Coming in at number 6, we have Donald Pierce. Donald Pierce is a notorious supervillain, best known as a cyborg and relentless enemy of the X-Men. Born into immense wealth, Pierce inherited his family's fortune and industrial empire, which opened the doors for him to join the elite Hellfire Club, where he rose to the rank of White Bishop. Despite his high standing, Pierce harbored a deep-seated hatred for mutants, joining the Hellfire Club not for power or prestige, but with the secret goal of exterminating its mutant members. His transformation into a cyborg began after a brutal defeat at the hands of Cable, which left him grievously injured and dependent on advanced prosthetics, fueling his self-loathing and further intensifying his anti-mutant crusade. Pierce helped create and lead the Reavers, an army of cybernetically enhanced criminals whose sole purpose was the eradication of mutants. Under his command, the Reavers captured Wolverine, torturing him before Jubilee intervened to save that hero. Even after apparent deaths and defeats, Pierce repeatedly resurfaced, orchestrating evil actions and mass endings, cementing his legacy as one of the X-Men's most relentless and ruthless foes. At our halfway point, we have Selene. Selene, known as the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club, is one of Marvel's oldest and most powerful mutants, with an origin stretching back literally thousands of years. Born to a tribe that recognized her unique powers, Selene's mother passed at her birth, and the elders commanded the tribe to sacrifice themselves to the little Selene, allowing her to feed on their life force and become their sole survivor. Over the millennia, Selene has wandered the world using her psychic vampirism to sustain her immortality, and has been responsible for countless atrocities, including commanding an entire city by force, entire cities such as Nova Roma, triggering the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, and orchestrating wars for her own gain. Among her most notorious acts is the Necrotia event, where she resurrected millions of deceased mutants from Genosha, absorbing their souls to ascend to godhood, and waging a war against the X-Men with her undead army. Selene's legacy is defined by her insatiable hunger for souls, manipulation of powerful organizations like the Hellfire Club, and a body count that ranks among the highest in X-Men history. In spot 4, we have Dark Phoenix. Not Jean Grey as like a whole person, specifically we're talking Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix is the villainous form of Jean Grey, a powerful mutant who becomes host to the cosmic Phoenix Force, a vast nexus of energy. Jean's psyche is twisted and she transforms into Dark Phoenix, a destructive and uncontrollable entity. One of her darkest moments, and perhaps the most infamous, is when Dark Phoenix consumes an entire star to replenish her power, causing a supernova that destroys the Debari planet and annihilates their entire alien race. This act marked a turning point in her story, leading to her eventual sacrifice. Overwhelmed by the destruction that she caused and the threat that she poses, Jean chooses to save the universe from further harm. Dark Phoenix remains one of the most tragic and complex villains in the X-Men saga, embodying the struggle between immense power and the loss of self-control. Getting into our top 3 to today we have Sebastian Shaw. Sebastian Shaw is one of the X-Men's most dangerous foes. A traumatic event triggered the manifestation of Sebastian's mutant ability, the power to absorb kinetic energy and convert it into superhuman strength. Driven by ambition and intellect, Shaw quickly rose from humble beginnings, getting rich through his company Shaw Industries, which specialized in defense contracts and munitions. His wealth and influence led to his recruitment into the secretive Hellfire Club, where he ultimately seized control as the ruthless Black King, manipulating both mutants and humans to achieve that goal. He was instrumental in funding and advancing the Sentinel program, designed to hunt and end mutants, using his position to control and weaponize anti-mutant sentiment for his own ends. His ambition led him to betray and end rivals within the Hellfire Club. Despite frequent defeats and betrayals on his part, Shaw remains a symbol of ruthless ambition, manipulation, and the dark potential of unchecked power within the Marvel Universe. But today's runner-up is none other than William Stryker. Stryker is driven by a fanatical hatred of mutants that stems from a deeply personal and tragic origin. Stryker's life took a dark turn when his wife gave birth to a mutant son. Horrified by his child's nature, Stryker ended both the wife and son, then attempted to end himself but survived, and interpreted that as a sign that he was chosen by God to wage war against mutants. Okay, this conviction led him to become a charismatic televangelist and the founder of the Purifiers, a parliamentary group dedicated to mutant ending. He orchestrated the abduction and brainwashing of Professor Xavier, aiming to use his telepathic powers to exterminate all mutants, a plan that forced the X-Men to ally with their enemy at the time, Magneto, to stop him. He also attempted to publicly end Kitty Pryde on live TV, only to be stopped by law enforcement. Over the years, Stryker escalated. He was resurrected as a cyborg, led new incarnations of Weapon X, and oversaw a horrific experience to create mutant-ending cyborgs and even Hulk mutant hybrids. Despite his evolving methods and occasional brushes with the supernatural and technological, Stryker remains defined by his relentless intolerance. And finally, in the top spot today is Magneto. Max Eisenhart, better known as Magneto, is one of Marvel's most complex and truly tragic villains. Born to a Jewish family in Germany in the 1920s, Max's early life was marked by the horrors of the Big Event during World War II. His family was captured by the evil army and sent to the camps, where Max witnessed the ending of his loved ones and was forced to assist his captors in operating the camp's machinery, a trauma that caused the emergence of his mutant powers. After the war, he adopted the name Eric Lehnsherr and tried to build a new life, but tragedy struck again when his daughter Anya passed in a fire caused by an anti-mutant mob, an event that pushed him over the edge, and in a fit of rage, Max unleashed his powers, ending those responsible and cementing his path as Magneto, the self-declared protector of mutant kind willing to use any means necessary. His darkest moments include founding the Brotherhood of Mutants to wage war against humanity, acts of mass violence, and a willingness to sacrifice innocents for his cause, all fueled by the conviction that mutants must dominate to avoid the persecution he once suffered. Magneto's story is defined by loss, vengeance, and the enduring scars of his past, making him a villain whose actions are inseparable from the pain and injustice of his origins.
Number 10. Unus the Untouchable. Unus the Untouchable, what a wild character. An oldie and a goodie. Unus actually first appeared back in the original X-Men run, making his first appearance back in X-Men issue number 8, which after hundreds of X-Men issues is pretty old at this point. Unus himself is what he sounds like. His mutant powers allow him to become untouchable when he wishes, shielding him completely when activated. This psionic repulsion shield that he can create can be as thick or thin as he wants. Unus, whose current civilian name is Gunther Bane, has also been shown to be capable of reaching through the shield himself if needed, without dropping it entirely. Pretty powerful. It's not so powerful if someone comes and tries to make the shield something you have to deal with all the time, which is how they defeated him the first time though. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we are doing here, if you love obscure X-Men villains like me, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Nemesis. This character rose to notoriety under a different name and is commonly referred to and known by that codename, but we can't say it here on YouTube, so instead we're gonna go with this other name, Nemesis, which is also a very AOA name, so yeah. Nemesis is known in the Age of Apocalypse reality for being the son of Apocalypse. At least, the alleged son of Apocalypse. I think we pretty much know at this point. We also don't know who his mother is though, so that's still a mystery. But it probably wasn't the woman we now know as Apocalypse's wife in the main continuity thanks to modern X-Men books, Genesis. Which is also kind of a confusing name for her to have in regards to Apocalypse's and X-Men history, but anyways. Nemesis, being an ally and horseman of Apocalypse, ends up being a major antagonist and problem for the X-Men in this universe, who are led by Magneto, as Professor X is dead in AOA, which is kinda, you know, what helped bring about this whole dread alternate reality of Earth 295, aka Age of Apocalypse. Number 8, Dark Riders. Oh boy, the Dark Riders. What a weird group. No wonder we haven't seen them that much. The Dark Riders are believed to be Inhumans who for some reason allied themselves with Apocalypse, seemingly believing in his vision of a mutant-dominated world and his ideology of survival of the fittest. I don't know how Apocalypse convinced them that this was a good idea, but they do seem to be pretty into it, I'd say, so I gotta assume that he was just like really persuasive and didn't just straight up threaten them. But still, it's a whole weird thing. The Dark Riders, they're weird. The original roster included team members Foxbat, Gauntlet, Tusk, Hard Drive, Synapse, and Barrage. I mean, I feel like that also just says it all. Listen to those names. The Dark Riders. Number 7, Cassandra Nova. I love Cassandra Nova. With every issue of Marauders I am reading, I fall more in love with this strange and terrifying character. Cassandra Nova is basically Charles Xavier's evil twin, but she's also not a straight up evil twin. She is what the Shi'ar would actually call a Mumadrai. The Shi'ar believe that Mumadrai are basically evil twin spirits of newborns who must be defeated before said person can be born. So the idea with that is that like basically we all before we were born fought an evil version of ourselves. They serve to represent the exact opposite of everything that we are. So in the case of Xavier, who is often presented as being a pretty good guy, though you know, not always, Cassandra is pretty evil in comparison. While Xavier did successfully defeat her before he came into the world with his telepathic mutant powers manifesting while he was in the womb, because of his own psionic potential, Cassandra herself was powerful enough to survive this and eventually would return years later to fight against Xavier and his beloved mutants. Although, in being Charles's twin, she herself is also basically a mutant, so yeah. She's a mutant, but she's also Mumadrai. Number 6, Nimrod. If we're talking about the new Nimrod, he is well known thanks to the current era, but even he is still somewhat obscure as an X-Men villain, considering that, you know, he hasn't been around for too long and only appears in a few issues at this point. However, even going back and talking about the more famous Nimrod from the Days of Future Past reality, for those who are not familiar, this could actually still be a version of the character who is considered obscure. The main Days of Future Past reality is often considered to be Earth 811, which is where Nimrod hails from. Here, and even in the current main timeline of Earth 616, Nimrod is considered to be a super sentinel, a super advanced mutant killing and detecting machine. So if you thought the Sentinels were bad, woo, wait till you meet Nimrod. He's crazy, even though his name is kinda dumb. That's why I love him though. Number 5, Harold Leland. Despite having recently returned, Harold is usually someone often left out when it comes to his involvement with the previous villainous group known as the Hellfire Club. Or well, you know, he's kind of more, he's like on the side. Like Harry's there, but maybe in the back. Well, really, the Hellfire Club has become 2 different entities at this point now as well, with one remaining pretty villainous and the other being a somewhat altruistic Krakoan-based business known as the Hellfire Trading Club. Prior to Harry's resurrection on Krakoa though, he was a pretty bad guy and member of the Hellfire Club, back when it was made up of villains, before it was, you know, just about business and mutants and all that stuff. Throughout many of his Hellfire days, Leland was often seen as the right-hand man to more well-known mutant villain, Black King of the Hellfire Club, Sebastian Shaw. And those were also back in the days when the Hellfire Club just wanted to like rule the world. Although who knows, maybe the trading company does want to rule the world. That would be an interesting twist. Number 4, Charles Xavier II, or Charles Xavier II. Charles Xavier II is the child of Mystique and Professor X. Wait. What? Yep, at one point these two had a child together, and in the main continuity too. That happened. Well, we don't really know fully what happened to this child in the main continuity, who I feel like we kinda just forgot about, who Mystique also gave up for adoption, surprise surprise. We do know of an alternate version of the character who actually gets a bit of a story in the reality of Earth 13729, where he joins up with his half-brother Reyes and basically becomes a villain. So that's the version we're focusing on for this point. Charles Xavier II accidentally kills his adopted adoptive mother when his powers emerged, causing him to seek out his birth mother, Mystique. However, she is no longer around because she has been killed at this point by his half-brother, Reyes. Charles too then decides to create his own team of X-Men, believing that the current team has disgraced his father's name, who is also dead at this point. However, he's not a very good guy at all, and instead of inspiring a team of mutants to, be better, he just uses mind control to get them to join him, giving them just enough awareness and control to kind of realize what's happening to them, but not enough that they can actually do anything about it. Yikes, that's really evil, man. That's really evil. Like, he could have just mind controlled them and been like, then you just won't be aware. But no, he was like, I want you to know what's happening. Number 3, Horticulture. Horticulture are such an awesome group of villain ladies. I really hope they do continue to appear for years to come and become super mainstream and not obscure. Like, I want to see them in the MCU. They deserve a live-action adaptation despite being pretty new. They made their first appearance in the 2019 X-Men series in issue number 3 and are a group of villainous women who plan to take over the world by controlling seeds and crops. In essence, they hope to drastically diminish the human population of Earth to return the world to a more natural state, thereby deciding through controlling seeds and crops as botanical scientists who will live and who will die. Number 2, Lucifer. Lucifer is another super old school villain who you may have forgotten about, or you never knew about to begin with perhaps. But you know who didn't forget? I didn't forget. I did not forget back when Professor X weirdly implied that Lucifer, as in maybe the devil at the time that he was bringing it up, was the one behind him losing the ability to walk. That happened at one point, and I was like, what is happening here? Now, Lucifer is not actually Satan though. He's not that Lucifer. He's actually an alien from outer space. I don't think it makes it better. Lucifer is a Quist from the planet Quistelium. He originally came to Earth to conquer it, but was foiled by Xavier, so he basically dropped a big rock on him. I'm not joking, that's pretty much what happened. Although initially implied to maybe be the devil, we later learn he is just a super advanced and intelligent alien dude. Though not too intelligent because, the X-Men do defeat him. Number 1, Cordyceps Jones. Cordyceps Jones is one of the newest villains to pester the X-Men. He actively fought against the most recently retired roster in the current run, before Forge, Firestar, Iceman, Magic, and Havoc joined the team. Cordyceps Jones, however, only recently went up against the X-Men, having targeted Earth by putting a bounty on it after encouraging people to gamble on its destruction at one of his massive cosmic casinos, Game World. Prior to that, he made his first appearance in the 2017 Rocket series in issue number 4, which is also why Rocket was the one to help the X-Men with finding Game World and infiltrating it. Thankfully, they had a direct link to him through a team member at the time, Rogue, whose husband Gambit is a fellow friend of Rocket's through their shared love of gambling. We also learned in their pursuit of Game World and Cordyceps Jones that Gambit's secret nickname for Rocket is Small Blind. Cordyceps Jones might be newer in the comics, having appeared in less than 10 issues at the time of this recording, but he's actually an ancient threat, being over 30,000 years old and also being a giant parasitic fungal spore. He and obscure Wolverine villain Spore actually could probably do some crazy damage should they ever team up. That would be pretty wild. If you're watching this and you're from Marvel, make that happen. That sounds like a cool team up actually. And now we know Spore is maybe alive.
Number 10, Forearm. This villain was a member of the Mutant Liberation Front who frequently came up against members of the New Mutants and X-Force, as well as occasionally the X-Men. Although many of the other members of this team vary from appearance to appearance, Forearm is a mainstay of the group. So, what can he do? Well, he has some increased durability, strength, and stamina, but as the name would suggest, his main ability is that he has 4 arms. He eventually left the Mutant Liberation Front once he discovered that his fellow teammate and girlfriend Moonstone was really an undercover SHIELD agent. He was seen participating in the Bloodsport Championship, where he was killed by a member of the Serpent Society named Anaconda. But he later appeared alive and well with no explanation as a new member of a New Mutant Liberation team before eventually being welcomed to the New Mutant island of Koa and later joining Sword and Magic's Dark Riders.
Number 9, Mr. Sinister. It feels strange putting Mr. Sinister so low on this list, considering how truly unbelievable he is. I mean, Just look at him. And then go back and look at his first appearance. Remember when Sinister had sharp teeth? That was a time. Mr. Sinister has always been an unbelievable villain, not just because of his striking and unusual appearance, but because of his obsession with the Summers family, particularly Scott, and later because of his long-standing involvement with both the Summers and the Greys, as well as an origin that attached him to them when they traveled to the past, as well as an origin that tied him to Apocalypse. And now it's gotten even more unbelievable, with Mr. Sinister not just being one, but possibly existing as 4 separate entities, each belonging to their own unique race. Like, what is even happening with this man? He's crazy. At least no matter how unbelievable he continues to get, he will always look fabulous while doing it. That is something that I think in the comics is a guarantee. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not click that subscribe button? We know a lot of you are not subscribed, and you know what? Every time you click that subscribe button, a host gets their wings. So if you click it, maybe I'll just randomly start sprouting wings. Might not be on camera, but it'll happen eventually.
Number 8. Skinless Man. One of the more visually repellent villains on this list, Skinless Man was originally Harry Pizer, a mutant during the Cold War with elastic and multisensory skin, which allowed him to be an efficient spy and member of the Weapon Plus program. They augmented his strength and made his skin more durable and elastic and gave him the name Weapon 3. He was sent to obtain a weapon called the Orb of Necromancy, but was shot and left for dead by Phantom X and captured by the Captain Britain Corps, who removed his skin. Phantom X later stole his skin to create bullets that were sentient and therefore never missed. Pizer taught his muscle to imitate the powers his skin had had and became a villain, being recruited to the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. He typically fights X-Force rather than the X-Men, but honestly, potato potato. He is pretty unbelievable just because, I mean, look at him. What the hell? He eventually died in Uncanny X-Force number 34.
Number 7. Cassandra Nova. Cassandra Nova is one of the strangest, but also maybe in a weird twist, greatest X-Men villains ever. She is the evil twin of Professor Xavier that we never knew existed originally. But really, she isn't like a straight up evil twin. She is what's known as a Mummidry, which is an evil reflection of ourselves. The alien race known as the Shi'ar believe we must fight and defeat our Mummidry in order to be born successfully into the world. Yeah, it's a pretty wild concept. And also a weird one to apply to an Earthling like Xavier or even other people on Earth, considering, you know, this is a Shi'ar belief and ultimately a kind of a Shi'ar thing. But who says that Shi'ar's beliefs can't be true for other planets or Earthlings, I guess? Especially when Xavier would grow up to have such close ties to the Empire, even at one time becoming the consort of Lilandra Naramani, the ruler and magistrix of the Shi'ar Empire. And it gets even weirder. Not only did Professor X defeat Cassandra in the womb before being born, meaning his X gene was activated in utero, but she also somehow survived this encounter, likely thanks to the strength of the man that she was a doppel of. Cassandra survived for years as basically a kind of like a puddle of goo and would eventually return. And she's still around now, having been cured of her hatred towards mutants and even teaming up with the Mutant Marauders hero team on Krakoa in the modern day, which also is super weird, but I love it.
Number 6. Mojo. So, Mojo is a member of a race called the Spineless, who can't move without the help of motorized platforms. They were all driven insane by waves of energy that turned out to be television signals. Their government is based on the structure of the television industry, and Mojo is its leader, calling the world Mojo World and their universe the Mojoverse. Everyone on Mojo World is addicted to a gladiator-like sports show, and Mojo does everything he can to keep the ratings up. Some of his more infamous plots were when he replaced Psylocke's eyes with cameras so he could broadcast everything she saw to his people, or when he transformed the X-Men into children and later cloned them and made the X-Babies, who he hoped he could control. Honestly, every sentence about this guy makes less sense than the last, and his entire deal seems to be just really broad and surface level criticism of the entertainment industry, so I'm just gonna move on now.
Number 5. Lucifer. Lucifer has always been a really weird one for me from the comics, another enemy to Professor Charles Xavier. This Nemesis was originally attributed with paralyzing Charles, forcing him to be confined to a wheelchair. Initially, it was implied through mysterious illusions that Lucifer may actually be Satan himself. This was when Charles left the X-Men team in the care of Cyclops when he went on his own mission. Xavier did this following the students' graduation from his school, believing they were ready to be left on their own when it came to heroics, leaving Cyclops in charge. When Cyclops did reach out to him during his mission, Charles answered, as we saw in the comics, from a dark, kind of fiery looking cavern that he seemed to be lowering himself further into. There wasn't actually actual fire in these panels, I don't think, but definitely I feel like there was some red lighting happening. Also, the fact that the character's name was Lucifer, who Charles was in pursuit of. However, we later learned that Lucifer was not in fact Satan incarnate, but instead an alien trying to help his race conquer the Earth? Huh?
Number 4, Mammamax. Maximus Jensen's mutation is very off and kind of vague. He is a man who was either born or transformed into an elephant man. He has big tusks which he uses to attack his foes, has the strength of an elephant, which I guess kinda goes without saying, and has nearly invulnerable skin. Like all elephants, he has the ability to spit acid at people as well. What's that? Elephants don't do that? Well then, that's kind of a random ability for him to have, isn't it? He was a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, joining because he thought he'd get to hang out with tough Magneto-trained mutants. He was disappointed with the roster he got stuck with, and was presumably even more disappointed when he and the Brotherhood got stranded in Mojo World. He was eventually captured by the Facility, where he was eaten by a monster, but he was later resurrected by the Five in Krakoa. Now, I have no issue with an elephant villain, but the idea of someone being mutated to just be an elephant is pretty unbelievable, even for the X-Men.
Number 3, Moira McTaggart. Possibly one of the most shocking villains on our list is Moira McTaggart. Moira isn't unbelievable in the sense of being ridiculous or being weird, she is more shocking in the fact of her actual allegiances and origins, which have recently been revealed. For years, Moira has been established as a friend of the X-Men, a human ally who believes that mutants deserve equal rights. But we would later learn the truth, that Moira herself is actually a mutant. And then we'd later learn again that despite her actually also being a mutant, which you'd think would make her more allied with the X-Men, she is no longer an ally to the X-Men, but one of their #1 enemies. What? Moira would even join up with the deadly and influential organization known as Orchis, which aims to put an end to mutants in an effort to preserve and safeguard humanity. Moira herself has kind of been stripped of her mutant genes and powers and turned into a bit of a cyborg, but this hasn't stopped her from continuing in her fight against mutant kind, in a shocking comic book twist.
Number 2, Nimrod. Nimrod here comes from the Days of Future Past alternate future, where mutant hunting sentinels controlled North America. He is an advanced prototype of the program who tried to follow Rachel Summers into the past after her and Kate Pryde were discovered during a sabotage mission. He ended up undershooting his destination by about 20 years, where he killed Storm and forced Forge to build him a time machine, which took him to the current Marvel timeline, where he came into contact with and fought the X-Men on several occasions, eventually merging with the remains of the Master Mold and becoming Bastion. What I find so unbelievable about the character is that anyone would be scared of someone called Nimrod. In case you are not aware, Nimrod was the name of a legendary and skilled hunter from the Bible, so it is obviously implying that this Nimrod is designed to hunt mutants really efficiently. However, because Bugs Bunny would often sarcastically refer to Elmer Fudd as Nimrod in the old Looney Tunes cartoons, its meaning evolved in the general lexicon to mean an idiot. So as unbelievable as it sounds, a cartoon bunny has made me incapable of viewing this villain as threatening, because to the general public, he is calling himself an idiot.
Number 1, Ice Cream. Ice Cream has to be one of the weirdest mutant villains of all time, considering that his plan was to basically use his mutant power to turn into ice cream and then infiltrate the X-Men, and I guess I'm not really sure what his plan was here. He basically wanted revenge on the X-Men because he was jealous of how amazing their abilities were in comparison to his own. So I don't know how he thought he was gonna do that, because he's just a guy that could turn into ice cream, but yeah. Ice Cream was a very short-lived villain, not appearing specifically in X-Men, but simply as a villain to the team in issue number 1 of Obnoxio the Clown, which in all regards is also an extremely unbelievable comic that happened. In the end, his plan failed dramatically, and he got eaten by the clown who had been hired to come and celebrate Kitty Pryde's birthday. This is a strange time for everyone, but I imagine it was especially a strange time for Ice Cream. Also, I don't think he turns into a full ice cream. He also turns into a sundae, which, how is that? Is that part of it? Is he the banana as well? I am the banana.
At number 10 is Phoenix Force Magneto. In this reality, Magneto merged with the fiery cosmic force, forging a fearsome union. His quest to mold Hope Summers into a Phoenix host underscored his unrelenting will, defying warnings from the Avengers and X-Men alike. Yet this fusion spiraled into chaos, necessitating a coalition from Charles Xavier, the Hulk, and Wolverine to quell the cataclysm. The prospect of a Phoenix Magneto conjures an ominous blend, melding two extremes, the cosmic Phoenix Force and Magneto's unyielding darkness. Unlike others, Magneto swiftly swiftly succumb to the Force's corrupting influence, illuminating his inherent malevolence. This accelerated plunge led to a world-shattering clash, sparing only Wolverine through Jean Grey's timely intervention. In a universe where Magneto harnesses the Phoenix, a realm-engulfing menace emerges. In defeat, this fusion echoes the staggering potency and unbridled havoc they embody, weaving a tale of mutant and cosmic might on an unprecedented scale. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is Juggernautical. Juggernaut as a massive boat. Yeah, the multiverse is weird, you guys. Anyways, the Juggernautical, a seafaring behemoth, is unlike any other. See, this colossal ship being was no ordinary vessel. It was the marionette of a mystical book, a navigator of the arcane. But as fate would have it, this enigmatic tomb found its way into the clutches of none other than Admiral Harry Greik, a high-breaking officer of the Royal Navy. A perfect storm brewed as the Juggernautical set its course upon the Exiles, a group tasked with mending the threads of the multiverse, and the Juggernautical even crossed paths with the infamous Blackbeard. Yet, the winds of fortune are ever fickle. In a cinematic clash, Blink emerged as the hero of this otherworldly seafaring saga. With a flicker of teleportation mastery, she wrestled control of the book from the Greik's grasp and in an act of defiance, hurled it into the abysmal depths of the ocean. At number 8 is Sabretooth. I mean, it's a team up of Sabretooths from across the multiverse, so I'm calling the team the Sabretooth. In an alternate reality, a ferocious female Sabretooth is abducted by Graydon Creed, who's on a mission to eradicate versions of Sabretooth across the multiverse. She's imprisoned with other Sabretooths, all of whom have their power suppressed. Together they break free, confront Graydon, and after a fierce battle, banish him through a portal. United by their experience, they opt to stay in Earth 616, seizing a spaceship to embark on their own interdimensional adventure. At number 7 is Baron Sinister. Welcome to Battle World, the tapestry of twisted domains where alternate realities collide. Among these shards of existence, we find the enigmatic Baron Sinister ruling over his own dominion. Bar Sinister, a realm inhabited by clones and created by the Tyrant's hand. But clones can't be the only thing on this villain's menu, as he keeps a select few non-clones as playthings for his whims. Now Sinister and King Hyperion, two formidable forces, conspire against the House of Braddock of Higher Avalon. Exposed and accused of discord, Sinister faced trial under the gaze of God Emperor Doom's enforcers. A duel between Baron Sinister and Baron Braddock then ensued. Amidst the crumbling Doom's rule, Sinister, edged on by Captain Marvel, joined the rebellion, leading to clashes and a betrayal that culminated in his demise at the hands of Baron Apocalypse. At number 6 is Dark Phoenix Mystique. So this Mystique story is pretty familiar, shadowing the path of her mainstream self up until King Loki decides to give his brother Thor a run for his money with a Harley dose of suffering. During all this, Mystique decides it's time to settle her score with none other than Logan, aka Wolverine. She whips out this Phoenix Blaster, yeah, you heard me right, stealing away the Phoenix Force from him and spreading his body parts across the vast expanse of the multiverse. Her stint as the Dark Phoenix lands her a recruitment offer from the Multiversal Masters of Evil. These folks go on a multi-reality rampage, taking out prehistoric heroes left and right. Cue the showdown as they target Earth 616 prehistory. The prehistoric Avengers then team up with time-traveling counterparts for a 9-day cosmic brawl. But ultimately, Dark Phoenix Mystique faces her reckoning, confronting the forces of creation and meeting her end in the torrent of the first firmament. At number 5 is the Pyro Nightcrawler Chimera. Imagine a world where Pyro and Nightcrawler's DNA are blended together like a mutant smoothie. Now this flaming hot chimera finds itself in the company of the Legion of the Night, a group of shadowy teleporting amalgamations created by Mr. Sinister. Their latest escapade involves a rather daring ambush at the Sanctum Sanctorium, but hold on, there's a little bit of a twist. After Vox Ignis uses her Scream of Change to instill some morals and values into some of the clones, the reformed members of the Legion found themselves in a clash of ideologies with their steadfastly sinister comrades, and the inevitable showdown followed. A brawl that pitted reformation against loyalty, and well, I'm not gonna spoil the ending, but let's just say things got heated, pun intended. At number 4 is Sugar Man. No, he's not a candy enthusiast or a pastry chef. This guy's got a rather unique set of powers that'll make him stand out in the rogues gallery. First up, let's talk about his powerful tongue. Now, I know what you're all thinking. How impressive can a tongue really be? You have no idea. Sugar Man's tongue is no ordinary one. It's like a versatile tool of destruction, capable of piercing through almost anything. And I mean anything. We're talking stone, steel, and even beings in gaseous or liquid form. But that's not all, folks. Sugar Man could do a bit of size and mass alteration as well. He's got this nifty ability to control his own mass, which means he can shrink down if he wants to, and when he loses mass, he doesn't just vanish into thin air, it apparently gets sent off to some mysterious extra-dimensional space. Where exactly? Well, it's anyone's guess. Oh, and injuries are no biggie. He regenerates faster than you can say ouch. He's shrugged off blows that would even make Wolverine winced. Crushed by Colossus' boot? No problem. Beaten to a pulp with a metal pipe? Back on his feet. Impaled with multiple pieces of metal? Just a minor inconvenience. But here's where things get really interesting. Sugar Man isn't just brawn, he's got brains too. Super genius intelligence, in fact, particularly when it comes to all things genetics. At number 3 is Omega World Apocalypse. In the far alternate future of 3167 AD, civilizations crumble, races vanish, and the survivors, the Atlanteans and humans and the Stark Self, Wakandans, Mystics, and Moldoids, find themselves under the oppressive rule of Apocalypse in a place called Omega World, a sprawling structure where Apocalypse has essentially become the heart, turning what remained of Earth into what's essentially an extension of his body. His horsemen, now acting as sort of antibodies or white blood cells, would cleanse the Omega World of anything which would cause him harm. Long story short, Apocalypse gets himself a fatal knife to the back by Nightcrawler, causing Omega World to crumble. At number 2 is the Sky Whale Brood Queen. Okay, this one is super weird. So somehow on Earth 13371, Charles Xavier becomes an Akanti Sky Whale. I can't even look at it. For those listening, imagine a giant cosmic whale with fleshy skin and a pupilless human face. It's truly a bizarre sight to be seen. But things get even more bizarre as our good old Xavier Sky Whale hybrid gets taken over by none other than the Brood Queen, set out on conquering the Marvel Universe and using Xavier as a vessel to transport her alien brood. Now, despite being telepathically controlled by the Brood Queen, Xavier's mental fortitude allowed him to keep most of his powers a secret from her. After teleporting to Earth 616, the Brood Queen was exterminated by the Extreme X-Men. Once freed, Char Whales Xavier, I like that one, Char Whales, no, asks Dazzler to end his life as he knew that in this form he was weak and could be dangerous if controlled by a more powerful mind. Get dunked on, Brood Queen. And at number 1 is President X. In this alternate universe, Charles Xavier, who never establishes Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, decides to become a politician instead. And yup, that's all it takes for Xavier to become the evil polar opposite counterpart to his 616 version, becoming completely wrathful, cruel, and a sadistically megalomaniacal tyrant desiring nothing but total control over everyone around him. Cause remember y'all, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Though he's never revealed to be a mutant himself, it's speculated that Xavier's telekinetic abilities aided him in tracking down mutants across the nation. A stark contrast to his Earth 616 counterpart, this Xavier exhibited an authoritarian and cruel rule, causing protests notably from billionaire Anthony Stark. The catalyst for change arrived as Stark formed the Avengers specifically to counter Xavier's regime. Unfortunately, Xavier's response proved devastating as a missile targeted the Avengers' Quinjet, obliterating its occupants. This tragic loss included iconic figures like Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and other— Wait, Thor? Hold up, he took out Thor with a missile? Whoa, okay. With big players gone, Xavier's oppressive reign expanded further, with all mutants confined to a grim prison in Texas, subjected to his psychological torment and horrifically abusive tendencies, even torturing some of them to their demise while subjugating the survivors to cruel experiments in an effort to control their mutations for their own good. This dark incarnation of Xavier remains a chilling portrait of power-driven malevolence, unafraid to exercise a ruthless authority.
Number 10, Madelyne Pryor. I have a strong admiration for Madelyne Pryor, one of the most captivating villains in the X-Men series. Maddie's backstory reveals what drives her actions, and despite her evil deeds, one cannot help but empathize with her. She's known as the Goblin Queen, and her dominant energy adds to her straight-up allure. Maddie is a woman who always gets what she wants, no matter the cost, which has led her to commit some seriously heinous acts. However, deep down, Maddie craves love and acceptance, and all her attempts to achieve this have only pushed her further away from it, sadly. She perfectly fits the quote, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." Maddie is deadly, dangerous, often unhinged, and filled with rage, but her backstory also makes her a very tragic character. It's hard, honestly, not to love her. She definitely deserves your love and admiration. Also, if you're wondering why I included her on this list, it's from experience. Whenever I cosplay as Madelyne Pryor, I frequently get mistaken for DC Comics' Raven, so she's clearly not super well known. But, you know, I love her anyways. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love when we talk X-Men, here on Top 10 Nerd. I know I do. Be sure to head on over to our X-Men playlist for even more good X-Men content. Number 9, Mojo. Mojo is probably one of the freakiest villains we have for the X-Men. While fans of the comics may be familiar with him, more casual fans may not. He is from his own universe known as the Mojoverse. Here he runs his own television network and is obsessed with securing good ratings, making those who serve him perform on live broadcasts, and the performances he often demands from folks usually involve death-defying acts and other dangerous and deadly feats. So, pretty scary. Number 8, Unus the Untouchable. A villain who almost foiled the X-Men in their early days was Unus. Unus the Untouchable was a mutant who couldn't be touched by those who would do harm to him, making him seemingly invincible when he first came up against the X-Men in issue number 8 of the original series. His power was also weirdly specific, as it didn't repel all things from him and mainly seemed to target those who fought against him and projectiles that of course would do him harm. When Unus turned to a life of crime, Beast was the one to stop him by creating a device that intensified his power, causing everything to be repelled from Unus, including food. Starving, Unus eventually agreed to stay on the straight and narrow, and Beast returned his power levels to how they once were, allowing Unus to return to his wrestling career. Number 7, Carmilla Unicione. Carmilla Unicione is suspected to be the daughter of Unus the Untouchable. Carmilla was one of the members of the Acolytes. She was loyal to Magneto, working specifically under Exodus during her time with his Acolytes. During her time with them, she faced multiple superhero groups, including, you guessed it, the X-Men. Number 6, Dirtnap. Dirtnap is a weird character, but one who kind of has a beautiful story. Dirtnap originally appeared as one of Genesis's Dark Riders, Tyler Dayspring's Genesis, to be clear. Dirtnap was a mutant who had the ability to absorb beings into himself, thereby basically adopting their form. However, you would know it was Dirtnap because of a red smiley face that would appear somewhere on him, either on his clothes or on his body while in that form. While fleeing from Wolverine, however, he absorbed a rat and became stuck, or perhaps just preferred this form, keeping it. Dirtnap would later on actually end up joining the X-Men, befriending Generation X, and even sacrifice his own life to protect them. However, we're now in the time of mutant resurrection, and more recently in the 2022 series of Marauders in issue number 6, Dirtnap was spotted spying on Lockheed, who was in turn spying on villain Brimstone Love's Theater of Pain. The indicator that he returned back to being evil was his smiley face. When he turned to good, it became yellow, but in that issue, it was back to being red. Number 5, Solemn. Solemn is one of the new X-Men villains on the block. Solemn is a mutant of Arakko who, instead of having adamantium bones, possesses adamantium skin. He was one of the sword bearers of Arakko during the Ten of Swords tournament. In fact, he was the one mutant we thought would face off against Wolverine, because, you know, adamantium bones, adamantium skin. But in an unexpected turn, Solemn didn't even really fight at all. He was initially set to fight against one of his own, because this was Saturnine's tournament, and honestly, it was gloriously weird. Instead, Solemn used a favor owed to him by Wolverine from when they both had to venture to Hell to get their Muramasa blades so that they could enter the tournament and also use said blades in the tournament, making Wolverine tap in and fight on his behalf. Solemn is presented as being a smooth talker, master manipulator, and just overall trickster. Maybe that's why I like him so much. After Ten of Swords, we also see him as a rival of Wolverine. One thing is for sure, you should definitely never trust Solemn, based on what I've seen. Number 4, Pog or Pog. Pog or Pog is as weird as he sounds, which could be why you've never heard of him before, or it could just be because you weren't reading Ten of Swords like I told you to do before when it was all happening. Tisk tisk. For all those who missed out, Ten of Swords was an amazing X-Men crossover event. It was one of those classic true crossovers happening between multiple series, with each issue adding a piece of the story. There was also a main series if you wanted the broad strokes, but that also of course perfectly tied into everything else. While it's a lot to read, I thought it was an amazingly done event all in all. Some parts are a bit goofy, some parts are more serious, and some are just downright epic. Pog or Pog as a new character and antagonist sits somewhere between the epic and goofy categories. Initially, he appears to be a giant crocodile-like beast from Morocco, but in the end, we learn that this is simply a powerful organic suit he wears, and that inside is the smaller and real Pog or Pog, who pilots the suit and is somewhat goblin-like in appearance in reality. Pog or Pog also has to rhyme all the time, which I like. Number 3, Spore. Spore was apparently a super ancient evil that was created by the Deviants way back as a weapon to be used against the Eternals. However, Spore didn't just do harm to Eternals, but to all living things it came in contact with. As such, Spore was condemned by the Celestials and killed long ago. Or so they thought. After appearing to have been destroyed, Spore actually lived on through the soil below, in the spot where he was defeated. Eventually, through this soil, he was able to return through substances that were grown in it and used for experimentation on people like Roughhouse. In fact, Roughhouse ended up being infected and had to be saved later on by Wolverine as a result. Wolverine and his mutant friend Bandera ended up fighting against Spore with some help from the people of Tierra Verde and Sister Salvation, who possibly herself was a mutant. It's not really fully established, but it's suggested. While defeated, a small piece of Spore would apparently survive, having resurfaced recently, albeit somewhat randomly, in the 2020 volume of Iron Man in issue number 22. So that's a thing. I don't think Spore's done anything yet, but he's still apparently around somehow. Number 2, the Viscora. The Viscora are more than just one character. They are a bunch of them. A whole race, if you will. They made their first appearance in 2020's Cable issue number 5, where they appeared as an antagonistic alien race. They have only made a handful of appearances, only appearing, I believe, in Knights of X since then, and 2 issues of that miniseries. The Viscora were the reason that Sword initially went offline and disappeared. Their goal is to travel the cosmos looking for new worlds to absorb into their collective consciousness, learning everything they can about them before completely cleansing said world, or possibly said universe, wiping out everything within its existence. This was their intention with Earth and the main continuity, but in Cable they were initially stopped by Kid Cable and his parents, Cyclops and Jean Grey. Number 1, Brimstone Love. Whether we're talking about the Brimstone Love of Earth 928 or the Brimstone Love of Earth 616, both are pretty obscure to be honest. The original Brimstone Love, who first appeared in the Earth 928 reality, only made 8 appearances, while the main continuity version of the character has only made 3 appearances. Both are the leader and man behind the Theater of Pain. Tragically, while Brimstone Love was a newer villain to the Earth 616 continuity, making his first appearance in the first annual issue number 1 of the second volume of Marauders from 2022, he also probably won't be seen again if you haven't seen him yet. This is because Brimstone Love perishes, or at least is believed to have perished, as of the end of the Marauders run, issue number 12. That Marauders run, volume 2, not the first volume. He has a really great design, and his sadism was interesting to see, especially in one who is so strong in his convictions.